Hello there, Ben Bowers, the Spirit Specialist, and I am here today to talk to you about the brand new release from the White Peak Distillery down in Derbyshire. It is Wireworks Small Batch. Now, you might be thinking that this is their second release. We did have their inaugural release earlier this year, but they have had a second release since then. This is actually the third release of their single malt whiskey from the distillery. The second release was a very limited run that was called Oversmoke, that was only available from the distillery itself, simply because they didn't have that many bottles of it. But this is a general release that's available, so hopefully if I do that, you'll be able to see the details on there. Got a bit of reflection going. So we have 4,323 bottles. Now, unlike the inaugural, this isn't individually numbered, and it's another lightly peated like the inaugural was. But before I tell you what it tastes like, let me give you some background information on the distillery, but also the makeup of the liquid inside this bottle. The White Peak Distillery is based in Ambergate, Derbyshire, 12 miles north of Derby city centre. It was founded by Max and Claire Vaughan in 2016, who were following a dream for years of producing a single malt whisky in Derbyshire, despite no previous experience in the drinks industry. The distillery is sited in a 24-kilometre stretch of the Derwent Valley that was awarded UNESCO World Heritage status in 2001, within the old maintenance and store sheds of the Johnson and Nephew Wireworks that date back to 1876 and lasted for 120 years, which itself was rebuilt from a family-owned iron forge from the early 1800s. Initial spirit releases from White Peak included a range of gins and an agricole rum aged in ex-Bourbon barrels, with their first single malt whisky release initially scheduled for launch in November in 2021. However, supply issues with the distinctive bottle that pays homage to the wire and cable produced by the old factory meant the first release was delayed to February 2022. The team employ a longer than average fermentation period and use 2 copper pot stills of 3,000 and 2,100 litres in volume. Water is sourced from the River Derwent immediately adjacent to the distillery, utilising some of the old pumping infrastructure for their condenser cooling system. Only English barley is used, and when I visited a couple of days before the launch of their first release, the team had begun a run of spirit that was using barley taken purely from Derbyshire itself. Wireworks Small Batch is the third single malt whisky release from White Peak, following the inaugural first release and the distillery-only Oversmoke edition. Using a combination of 80% unpeated and 20% peated English barley, resulting in a phenol level of around 11 ppm, a 4-day fermentation period used a yeast blend incorporating live yeast sourced from the nearby Thornbridge Brewery. Spirit filled into first fill ex-Bourbon, virgin oak and shaved, toasted and recharred red wine casks that were all made from either American or French oak. A variety of ages averaging around 4 years were then selected for the batch, with predominantly STR casks being used, as well as a significant amount of ex-Bourbon. 4,323 bottles have been released at an ABV of 46.2%, with no colour added or chill filtration taking place. Right then, so I wasn't given any tasting stock, but that was because I knew A, I was taking it in, and B, because I'm actually going to be opening this bottle for a box set, a sample selection of new releases. You might have come across the New Kids on the Lock box, which actually had the first release in it earlier this year, and I'm going to do a summer one because I've managed to get my hands on a couple of other limited editions, so I'm going to do another box to give people the opportunity to try things that they might not necessarily be able to get their hands on. Now, I have had pre-orders for this. I have gone to my mailing list and let them know that it's coming in, but not all the allocation I got, which was a little more than I was expecting to get, to be honest, which is great because I really want to support this distillery. But at the moment, can you see it on there? I will have from tomorrow some stock actually available on the shelf. So if you're watching this and it sounds like it's going to float your boat, I may still have stock available if I've not sold out by the time you get to me. But this one is going to be decanted into a sample selection box with some other tasty bits and pieces. So keep an eye out for that. If you want to know about what's in that, sign up to the mailing list. They will be told about it first, and it might be that all the people on the mailing list buy it and it doesn't even get on the shelf. So here we have the White Peak Small Batch. So 80% unpeated, 20% peated. Again, we've got that combination of ex-Bourbon and STR casks. It'll be very interesting to see what it's like compared to the first release. And have I got any left? Yes. Just give me a minute. So it turns out that I still have a tiny little bit of first release left from when I decanted it. So there might be the slight factor of a little bit of evaporation within the bottle, so it might affect the flavour slightly. It's only been a couple of months, but it's quite low down in the bottle, so there may be a bit of evaporation going on there, but we shall see. But let's do it side by side with, I thought I dribbled on my leg then, with the whiskey, not with my mouth. Let's see how it compares to the first release. Admittedly, it might not be the exact first release as if you open a fresh bottle, nevertheless. So, in terms of colour, for what it's worth, I mean, there's not much in it, if anything at all. I'm less bothered about colour nowadays. I found myself more interested in the aroma and the flavour profile than actually what it looks like. So let's go for the second. I'm going to call this second release by accident. I shouldn't do. This is small batch, and it's not the second release, it's the third. So on the nose, oh, there's a lovely fruitiness straight off the bat. There's kind of like summer fruit pudding, but there's a little bit of soft spice in there as well. There's a touch of nutmeg, little bit of cracked black pepper, maybe like dry chili flakes, as well as that fruitiness. And that's possibly that little element of peated barley that's being used. There's a really nice fruitiness, and that was very much, I remember from recollection, prevalent on first release. So let's see if I've got it right. Interesting. Now, again, with the caveat that this is an open bottle that didn't have much left in the bottom, it might have maybe kind of evaporated a little bit within the bottle. But what's interesting is that fruitiness is there, but it's slightly fresher. On here, on the small batch, it definitely feels warmer, deeper, richer. There's like an extra dimension to it. There's a big fly buzzing around the place, and it's going to wind me up. Now, I've got one of these electric tennis rackets down here, but holding whiskey and swinging this around on camera, probably not a good idea. But rest assured, I'm going to get this little bastard at some point. Anyway, so the small batch feels like it's just got more to it. It feels richer, heavier, deeper, wider, harder, better, faster, stronger. It's just got more to it. Like I say, it might just be that I'm taking a sample from the bottom of the bottle, in essence. But I love that fruitiness. It's very much red fruits. It kind of really feels like kind of summer fruit that's got strawberries and raspberries, but also black currants. There's a juicy element to it as well. There's cherries in there, but it's counterbalanced with this lovely kind of like subtle spiciness that's not overpowering, but is there. You know it's there. Right, on the palate. Oh, that initial mouthfeel is absolutely gorgeous. That summer fruit pudding feel really comes through. There's a kind of creaminess to it as well. The mouthfeel feels quite thick. And then interestingly, kind of halfway through, the spice element washes over. And you get a lovely kind of slight sea salt, cracked black pepper, touch of that dry chili flake. Very much what's on the nose really comes through, but like ramped up to 11 on the palate. Again, not overpowering, not intense. It's got a youthfulness to it, which is accentuating the spicy notes. But the fruity character that's there and that mouthfeel, that rich, thick, I wouldn't say oily, it's a creamy mouthfeel, is very much there on the palate. I'm really, again, really impressed with this. Yeah, very fruity, very fruit forward, supported in the background initially by slightly drying spice that then comes to the finish, which then helps lengthen it, but that fruit element is still there. Now, I'm going to do the first release. So the small batch is 46.2%. The first release was 50.3. So we do have this higher alcohol element too. It might be that some of that's dissipated off with it being sat in the bottle for a bit, but let's go back to the first release. Lighter in terms of the mouthfeel. Again, very fruit forward. Again, summer fruits, that sort of feel. It doesn't feel as weighty, but I'm inclined to think that's because of how the spirit's been sat in the bottle. I'm inclined to think that because 50.3 on the first release, it doesn't feel like 50.3. I think we've had some evaporation within bottle that is just tempering it down, knocking it down slightly. So it's probably, to be honest, not a fair comparison for me to do this, because I'm not realistically comparing the small batch to first release as it is fresh out of the bottle. It's still delicious, don't get me wrong, but I have this feeling that it's been sat quite low down in the bottle for slightly too long, and some of that evaporation has taken place within the rest of the bottle that's there. So I'm going to put this down to finish later, because it is still jolly tasty indeed. And let's just focus on what's going on in the small batch. For me, it's about the mouthfeel. For me, it's that rich, creamy, it's like summer fruit pudding with a big dollop of thick, like whipped fresh cream, where it's whipped to the point where it's kind of like it won't fall off, but you're getting peaks from it, and it's not like too thick, and it's delicious kind of like unctuous creaminess to it. But then you get that spice coming through as well, which is adding complexity, adding interest, not overpowering, working with that summer fruit, and just kind of like taking it to another stage. It's really, really good, this. It is quite summery, but actually I think you could, I've started to find kind of, when I've been drinking whiskies, I've been kind of not only using symphonies and orchestras and things in terms of tasting the flavor, but also going for a bit of kind of like seasonality in terms of like, this is a spring kind of whiskey. This is a, you know, kind of imagining when the best time of year would be to try and drink this. And it's got that summer fruit feel that it would work really well. And I actually think lightly chilled in a garden in summer, there is enough of a fruitiness in it that you could quite easily enjoy this. But then that warm spice feel means that it would work as things start to get a little bit colder. So it's kind of a summer autumn whiskey. Just, it's got enough warmth and richness to it, as well as the fruitiness, that it would work just as the nights are starting to draw in. So summer solstice was this week. Unfortunately, we are going to start to see that the nights are getting longer, the days are getting shorter, the weather's going to start getting crappy. Admittedly, it's going to be in a couple of months' time, but we've got that to look forward to, yay. And it will work as it starts to get a little bit chillier and as it starts to get a bit darker. It's not a winter whiskey. It's not one for me kind of like to keep warm in front of a log fire. There's too much a light fruity touch to it. A really, really good expression from White Peak. I've had some fantastic feedback from people that are drinking it. I think there is so much going on here that means that as the years go on, there is going to be some very, very interesting spirit coming out from them. It's different enough from the first release, I think, even kind of based on what I remember from when I drank it first, let alone compared to that slightly evaporated version that I've got now. It is moving in a slightly different direction. I think this is slightly fruitier. I don't think this has the smokiness that the first release had on it. I think we're going a bit more fruit forward. It's not a drastic change from the first release. And I've not yet opened my oversmoke. I'm going to kind of save that until the tasting. But there is a definite progression. And for me, it's very much on the mouthfeel. I do like that weight, that rich creaminess that's in there. So I think there is more to come from this distillery, but what they are already doing is already fantastic. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's yet another tick in the box for English whiskey is doing some fantastic things here. And the English whiskey as a whole, let alone White Peak, it's got its own character now. It's very flavour forward at a young age. So it's got this kind of like fruitiness, you know, Filey Bay's the same. White Peak, you know, they've got the very fruit forward. There is a lovely kind of like berry note to a lot of these that I'm absolutely loving. And I think this is another fantastic expression from the distillery. I can't wait to try their next one. I'm hopefully going to get my hands on what they're going to do as a limited release where they've done a stout cask finish, and I think that could work really, really well with this. Very much looking forward to that. As I say, some of the stock is already earmarked for pre-orders, but I will have some on the shelf when it launches tomorrow. So if you do want a bottle, check out the website www.spiritspecialist.com, or pop in the shop. Give us a ring first if you want to come in, if you want this bottle specifically, because I may still have stock at the time you're watching this, and therefore you'll be able to buy a bottle. And I highly recommend it because I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I think White Peak are doing a stunning job. So that's me done. I shall see you at the next video. Cheers.